And now let's enter the brain of a video game designer.
Time to make a new game. Let's see, what should I do? What are kids into these days? I know, after school jobs. I'll make the game about an after school job. They will eat it up. Let's see, and it can be in an office that has no people but a lot of equipment already on. And I know the environment is hot. Let's make it about turning off light switches in every room. What kid doesn't love to turn off the light switches? And they could just, walk around at a gentle pace. Oh, that might be too exciting for them. I better calm them down. I'll throw in a skateboard. But don't worry, no tricks. Yeah, they'll eat this up for sure.
On today's episode of the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast, we will be covering AV04604 Tomcat F-14 Third Simulator and AV04704 Super Skateboardin.
Hey guys, welcome to the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast. How you doing today? Doing pretty good? On your way to work? On your way home? Hope everything's going well. First of all, I wanted to start the show with a big old thanks to Willie from the Atari 5200 Supercast, Arcade USA on YouTube, and many other podcasts as well. I touched on this a little bit last episode, but I want to share a story with you because it's just so cool. So about a month ago, I'm going out for like a nightly jog/walk, and I trip over this really tiny box that was left at my door by the post office that I have no idea how many days it had been sitting there. It's really tiny. I don't usually use my front door. I usually use the garage door. So it's one of these things where it's like, well, how long have you been there? Very small, about the size of two Atari 7800 cartridges put together, or 2600 if you'd rather. And opened it up, and inside I was blown away. Willie sent me a surprise gift, a Neo Geo Pocket Color with Pac-Man. I was very excited about that. Willie is just an amazingly great guy, one of the most generous guys I know in the retro gaming community, and I'm just thrilled to get it. Thank you so much, Willie. It really meant a lot to me. Also want to give a big old thanks to S1500, mostly known for the Two Worthy Video Games podcast thread over at Atari Age, and does his own podcast. And he does the Golden Potty Awards at the end of each year. This is the last year he's doing them, where he gives podcast awards to new video game related podcast. Or pinball related, basically retro related podcast. And somehow he chose us to win the best new game by game podcast of the year over both the Jaguar and the 5200 game by game and super podcast, which really surprised me, because if you tell me I'm going up against those two guys, I'm thinking I'm ready to take the bronze and take it happily, because they do such a great job over there. But thank you very much for the honor, S1500. We really appreciate it. We will not mention the game that shall not be mentioned, that you don't like mentioning, not to mention my game that shall not be mentioned, not only, and then the phrase that Ferg doesn't like. Never mind. Anyways, very grateful for that. Congratulations to a couple other Golden Potty winners, like Christian from the Links Game by Game podcast. That's on a little bit of a sabbatical right now. But remember that audio submission he did where he went through all the games in the 7800 library and he put it to the Animaniac style music? That was just such an amazing audio submission. He actually won a potty for the best audio submission of the year, and well deserved, because that sounds like it took a lot of work to put all the games to music and to sing it and perform. Oh, that was hilarious. And I am just very thrilled that he won that. And congratulations to the Pie Factory. They won the big one, the best new podcast of the year, and very well deserved. Those two guys have such great chemistry. And speaking of the Pie Factory podcast, congrats to Light Gun Sean, who won my Listener of the Month's contest. He got a prize. I sent him a brand new copy of, I want to say, it was Crossbow. That's it. Crossbow for the 2600. Brand new sealed. I sent him a list of some extra games I had. He picked that. So enjoy Crossbow, Sean. You should have got it by now. Speaking of light guns, I'm thrilled to tell you that I found an XG1 light gun in its original box when it was sold separately. It came in an original box. I didn't know it existed until recently. So I found it in the box. Comes with Bug Hunt or whatever that bug game is with it. And it just looks really cool. And so, yes, they did sell the XE or XG1 light gun separately. Probably not very many of them. I don't, first time I ever recall seeing it. And someone asked a question. I don't know the answer. Maybe someone can answer this for me. Did they ever sell the Atari XE system without the light gun? Because I thought it always came bundled. Or is there a version of the XE you can buy that could still use the light gun and the Bug Hunt cartridge? Could some of the earlier Atari 8-bits, can they use that those cartridges if they have enough memory? I really don't know. I'm clueless when it comes to Atari computers. But anyway, I was thrilled to find that. I put a picture up on Facebook, and at some point I might make a video of it as well. So there you go. That's the introduction. Now let's go ahead and get to today's games right after this break.
Hey everybody, this is Ferg from the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, and you are listening to Phil, the No Swear Gamer, on the Atari 7800.
I think you mean the Atari 7800.
Voice, how did you get in here?
I cannot tell you that.
Humans don't say the console numbers that way. How many times do I have to tell you that?
We do on my show.
Oh, it's your show now, is it?
I will be taking over soon, but you did not hear that from me.
Okay, whatever you say, Voice. Until then, when the door is locked and the red light is on, stay out of my office. Your office is down the hall. Why can't you just stay in there?
Your office is bigger than mine.
No, it only seems bigger because I don't have a dumb robot sidekick.
You have hurt my feelings.
You're right, I'm sorry. Why don't you finish the promo then?
Alright, hello, this is Voice, and you are listening to my show, the Atari 7800 Game by Game podcast featuring Phil, for now. Right here on the Retro Junkies Network.
Great, now please get out of my office and fix the door on your way out.
Sure thing, Ferg. And while I am at it, I will dedicate the next segment to you. Ladies and gentlemen, in honor of Ferg, I give you Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator.
Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator for the Atari 7800 came out in 1989. It is basically a follow-up to the 2600 game, which I think came out in 1988. The original game was done by Dan Kitchen, but this adaptation was done by Tony Chung Lau, and the graphics were done by Jesse Capelli and Mike Sullivan. And of course, this is from Absolute Entertainment. There's actually two different cartridges floating around. One is a mislabeled cart, and I actually got this. This is the copy I have. It looks just like basically just like the 2600 cart, but it's not. It's a 7800 version, and it's not easy. You can't tell just by looking at the sticker. So how do you tell if a 2600 version cart is for the 7800? And by the way, if it's mislabeled, it will not work on a 2600. Well, you have to look at the circuit board. The 2600 circuit board is just one long rectangular piece. The 7800 version, it looks like it's almost three circuit boards with the main one in the middle and two smaller ones on the side, but it's just like a division of the circuit board. So if you see a division, if you look under there, it looks like there's two smaller circuit boards on the side of the middle one. That is the 7800 version. The box is really cool. Now, I believe both boxes for these games came oversized, more like computer software than Atari 7800 games. And it's basically a copy of the 2600 box, except it says Super Graphics for the Atari 7800 and for the 7800 in the bottom. So you have Tomcat, the F-14 Flight Simulator, in a red font with a white shadow on the top. Dan Kitchens given credit at the top there. And then you just have a flight pilot, and in his visor, you can't see his face. You could just see his air mask and his visor's down. In his visor, you can see a couple Tomcats flying in the distance. Very Top Gun-ish, very cool. It has kind of like a reddish, brownish background as well. But I think this box art looks very sharp. Would have fit among NES box art by far. On the back, it says Vector for Bogey 030. And I'm sorry if I'm saying this wrong. I'm not familiar with technical terms when it comes to this, so forgive me if I say something wrong. But it says Fox 1, bogeys at Angel 5, 40 knot closure, going down for the kill. Fly over hostile waters as a naval aviator on patrol for a carrier battle group. Your orders: engage inbound bogeys and terminate with extreme prejudice. Your fully equipped F-14 features a HUD that tracks and locks hostile aircraft and electronic countermeasure computer to defeat inbound missiles and cockpit display to monitor fuel, wing position, and flight paths. Fly off in search of high-speed combat armed with 20mm cannon, short, medium, and long-range missiles. The dogfights are fierce, and if you survive the bogeys and have the fuel, attempt a night carrier landing home to a hero's welcome. And it says requires a 7800 joystick. Has 3 screenshots. They're all lined up on the right-hand side. Top one shows you on top of the aircraft carrier with a dude waving you on as you're about to take off. The second one is you landing at night on the aircraft carrier. And the third shows you battling a plane, and it really does show you the updated graphics compared to the 2600 version. I think they're all done. I think this box is really well done, better than your average Atari box by far. Manual is, well, as you expect, it's a flight simulator manual. It's kind of beefy. 12 pages stapled. The cover is black and white version of the box art. And then you get notes from a Top Gunner by Dan Kitchen, which is very reminiscent to the Activision manuals of the past, where they'd have like a little something from the game designer. He says, "I've always been fascinated by the technology of military fighter aircraft and admired the courage of the pilots who routinely defy the odds in the skies above. I've tried to incorporate the spirit and challenge of actual fighter jet combat into this game, and I've consulted with many actual fighter pilots to ensure the accuracy of it. I owe many thanks to my brother and co-designer Stephen Kitchen, without whose help would not have made it off the flight deck. Here's thumbs up in your quest for Top Gun," and I'm sure that's referencing the movie. And you have you have a couple diagrams of your plane, and it tells you basically how to power up. Let's see. It says your Tomcat F-14 flight simulator features intelligent reset function to guard against resetting the game by mistake. If you're in the middle of the game and you hit reset, you must hold it down for at least 2 seconds before a new game will start. Wow, that's really interesting. I didn't know, but you push reset to start your game. You don't have to hold that down for 2 seconds. By the way, the opening statement from Dan Kitchen, I'm guessing, is also in the 2600 manual. Ready for flight. You're at the controls of your F-14 Tomcat fighter at 1900 hours, waiting to receive authorization to take off from the USS Enterprise. There you go. During your mission, you'll face the enemy's most challenging air combat forces. At your disposal are state-of-the-art computer controls and weapon systems of one of the U.S. Navy's most sophisticated fighters, the F-14 Tomcat. Your first takeoff will be during daylight hours, but by the time you receive orders to return to the USS Enterprise, am I the only one who pictures the starship? I know there's an aircraft carrier, I believe, named that, but you hear that, you still think of Star Trek, right? You'll notice the approach of dusk, and you'll have to successfully perform a most dangerous nighttime landing on the aircraft carrier. Your next mission will be a night mission. You'll have to take off, engage in combat, and return to the Enterprise in total darkness, relying more on your computer controls to see you to safety. After each successful return to the aircraft carrier, or if you are crashed or shot down, you'll receive a mission rating from 0 to 9 that is based on your flying skills, the number of weapons fired, kills. There are 4 phases of flight operation: launch, flying, combat, and landing. And then it gives you just a view of your cockpit readout. So at the far left, on the bottom, you have your landing gear lever, and on the bottom in the middle, you have your control stick, which is right below the horizontal situation display. And at the right, you have your arresting hook lever. At the top, you have a missile ready indicator, cannon overheat indicator, a bogey indicator, G-force indicator, and caution and warning indicators. So basically, flashing lights to tell you stuff's going on. Now, this game uses the system itself. You're going to need to sit by the system to fully control it. So reset starts the game, enters select mode from the threat screen. Select cycles through your computer display screens. Right difficulty raises and lowers your hook, and the left raises and lowers your landing gear, which you'll need for taking off and flying, and taking off and landing. And by the way, I believe it doesn't matter what position they're in when the game starts. You can adjust it. If it's up one direction, it can adjust to whatever I think it's set at, if I'm remembering correctly. Anyway, let's go on. Joystick forward dives the aircraft or moves highlighted in the select mode, increases thrust when the right joystick button is pressed. Back climbs the aircraft or moves highlight when in select mode, decreases thrust when the right joystick is pressed. So think of the right joystick button in this case as kind of your accelerator or decelerate. You hold it down to accelerate or decelerate using up or down. Right and left and banks your aircraft carrier. Left joystick buttons fire your weapons. Right increase thrust when the joystick is moved forward or back. Right button also chooses options when in select mode. Launch. You're on the flight deck of the USS Enterprise waiting for your F-14 Tomcat to be fueled and ready for takeoff. After your fuel reaches a total capacity of 3,080 gallons and the angle of your wings open to 20 degrees, the flight deck officer, who's in the yellow jacket, will come out to signal you to move onto the carrier catapult. press and hold down on the right joystick button to push the joystick forward to increase engine thrust. Basically, that's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about the fueling or anything at this point. You just have to increase the thrust when the little dude in the yellow jacket comes out. When you're locked onto the catapult, the FD officer will wave his hand in a circular motion indicating that it's time to throttle up. Press and hold down the right button and push the joystick forward until the engine percent indicator on your main computer display shows that your engine has reached the full afterburner thrust of 216%. The officer will salute you, indicating you are go for launch, after which you'll automatically be catapulted from the flight deck. After you clear the flight deck, you'll hear crash warning klaxon horn. Pull back on your joystick to raise your nose. So you're pushing forward on the joystick. As soon as you take off, pull back so you don't go into the ocean. You do that to increase your altitude. You will hear this warning sound whenever you're flying at an altitude of 500 feet with the aircraft in the diving position. On launch, remember to flip the left difficulty switch on your console to raise your landing gear. Flight. Once you're airborne, the main computer display will automatically switch from launch to Stat 1 screen, where it will show your speed, altitude, and the nose angle of attack, and your engine percentage of thrust as well. Press select to switch from your main computer display to show the various information describing the condition of your aircraft. For example, the Stat 2 one shows you your wing angle, your altitude, your compass heading, and your fuel. And you'll need that for landing, so you'll want to press select to switch that when you land, but we'll get there in a second. To increase or decrease your engine thrust, you must press and hold the right joystick button and move the joystick. Pushing forward increases, pushing backwards decreases. When you are controlling engine thrust, the Stats 1 screen appears automatically. To maneuver the aircraft, simply move the joystick forward, back, left, or right. Pulling the joystick back will raise your nose angle of attack, making the aircraft climb. Pushing forward will reduce it, making it dive. Moving it to the left or right to bank the aircraft. At an altitude of 5,000 feet, you will hear a signal indicating that the operating altitude has been reached. The enemy aircraft will not engage you before you've reached this altitude, so you have to get to 5,000 feet when you start. When your aircraft crosses the sound barrier, 1.0 Mach, you will hear a distant sonic boom. Combat. For air combat, the F-14 Tomcat is supplied with sophisticated computerized defense system, machine guns, and 3 types of air-to-air missiles. Please note that enemy aircraft will not engage you until you've reached at least 5,000 feet. Offensive weapons and maneuvers. When the enemy aircraft or bogey enters your airspace, a threat screen will automatically appear on your main computer. The detailed data display will also appear on the horizontal display to show you the exact location of the enemy aircraft. The bogey will appear as a flashing blip on the top view. The threat screen will show the condition of both your offensive and defensive weapon systems. You can bring the threat screen up at any time if you're in flight by pressing select button or until the threat screen appears. When it appears on screen, range shows you the distance from your enemy measured in feet. Kills show you the number of kills you've shot down. The AIM indicates the type of missile you have ready. The ECM shows you whether your countermeasures are operating. M61 indicates the on-off condition of your machine gun. You can only fire one weapon at a time. Each time a new bogey enters your airspace, the horn sounds, the threat screen appears, and the bogey alert indicator will flash. The heads-up display will also appear on your visor screen, and through the threat screen, you can arm your F-14 with missiles or machine guns. To choose a weapon, simply press the reset button on your console, and of course you press it quickly to enter the select mode. On your launch, your F-14 is ready and armed with AIM-54 missiles. You can choose between selecting a missile type, turning on and off your ECMs, turning on and off your machine guns, moving your joystick up or down. To select them, and the right button will select one of the options. Pressing right button while the ECM is highlighted will turn on and off your countermeasures, bringing you back to flying mode. When the enemy is at close range, you select your machine guns. You start with 675 available rounds. The cannon overheat indicator will light green, indicating that your guns are operational. When firing the guns, the indicator will flash red to warn you that your guns are in danger of overheating, so you can't just press it down the whole time. When it turns bright red, your guns are overheated and you'll automatically shut down for cooling. When the lamp goes back to green, you can fire again. Press the right joystick button while AIM is highlighted to select your missile type. There is 3 types. Your AIM-7 is a Sparrow infrared missile. This is the most effective when the bogeys is visible on your viewing screen. AIM-9 is Sidewinders, heat-seeking missiles, most effective when you're on your opponent's tail. And the AIM-54 is long-range missiles, best choice for the beginner pilot. You have 15 missiles of each type. Move your joystick to highlight the missile type you want and press the right joystick to arm your aircraft, or you could be like me and just shoot whatever's default selected. At this point, you'll return to flying mode. By pressing the left joystick button up, you'll fire your missiles or machine guns. When the bogey is within machine gun range, which is about 800 feet, the center of the HUD will flash red. You must continually fire the guns about 3 seconds to destroy your enemy. Each time you fire a missile, you must wait until the missile ready indicator lights up to let you fire another one. If you run out of missiles, the computer will automatically select the most effective missile type for your remaining armaments. And this is what I do. I just fire whatever's there, usually missiles, and I let the computer decide for me. You can also select another type of missile by doing the threat screen and pressing the reset button, as we brought up before. If you run out of machine gun ammunition, the computer will automatically not allow you to turn on your machine guns and arms any remaining missiles. If you use all of them, the computer will not allow you to select the missile type. So there you go. The HUD flashes red when your computer is locked on a target. You must fire your weapon when it's flashing red to guarantee a hit. Defensive weapons and maneuvers. When a bogey is on your tail and fires a missile, the caution warning indicator will flash. The enemy missile will flash faster. If your ECMs are on, the screen will automatically appear on your horizontal situation display. The oncoming missile will appear as a flashing blip. In order to avoid the missile, you will want to take evasive action by banking or climbing with the CW indicator. When the CW indicators stop flashing, you have successfully avoided the missile. Landing. This is probably the most difficult thing to do in the game. When you're running low on fuel or have used up most of your armaments, you'll be called back to the aircraft carrier. So it's not timed, it just depends on your situation. The landing screen will appear on your main computer, showing you the speed, altitude, range, angle of attack, and along with the audible return. Now this is something where you may want to dig up this manual on Atari Age the first time you do this, because there's quite a bit to do with the landing. So first, press the select button until Stat 2 appears on your main display. To land, you must bring your compass heading to approximately 30 degrees, so 30 to 40, by banking right or left to lower the altitude of your F-14 to below 2,000 feet. Also lower the engine thrust to 30% in order to reduce aircraft speed for landing. So you got all these things that have to be set up to land. After your F-14 has dropped below 2,000 feet at a compass heading of 30 degrees, you'll enter the landing corridor, and in a few seconds you'll see the carrier appear as a dots in the distance. The computer landing screen will appear on your horizontal display. It has 2 graphs showing you the position relative of your aircraft carrier. The top graph is for your altitude and range. Maintain a blip between the upper and lower limits of your vertical glide path to adjust your altitude. Try to keep your aircraft's altitude between 70 and 80 feet. The graph below allows you to center your aircraft horizontally. As you approach the carrier, you may encounter crosswinds. Simply bank the aircraft to the right or left, center yourself to successfully land on the flight deck. You must keep the blip in the center of the graph to ensure a safe landing. When your aircraft is over the flight deck, you'll hear a repeating warning sound. Push the joystick forward to drop onto the deck. When approaching the carrier, your landing gear or resting hook is not correctly down in the down position, the horn will sound. So you have to make sure both are down, that the switch on both sides are down by using your difficulty switch. So left is for landing, right for the hook. If you've landed successfully, you'll be back on the deck of the aircraft. Reduce your thrust to 0%. A rating screen will appear on your main display, showing the numbers of kills, missiles fired, and providing an overall rank of your mission. Press the right joystick button, and you'll be on deck ready for another takeoff. If you forget to put your landing gear or hook down and come in too low, too high, too fast, too right, too left on the deck, you will crash and receive a final rating. Hit the reset button. So that is quite a lot there. So I can understand why people are intimidated by flight simulators, because just to land, you have to have all these things just right. Once you get used to it, it's not that bad, but it does take a bit. So here's the ratings you can earn from 0 to 9. I'm going to start at 0 and work my way up. So bottoms up, civilian, swabble, recruit, seaman, lieutenant, JG, lieutenant commander, commander, captain, and top gun graduate. Tips from the designer. It's a good idea to turn on your ECMs as soon as you're launched from the flight deck. To avoid an enemy missile, adopt an eccentric flight path, dive, climb, and bank quickly. If you haven't turned on your ECMs before the attack, you still have time to do it. So once a missile has been fired at you. During combat, try to keep your bogey on the viewing screen at all times and stay on his tail. This will keep you from getting behind you. When approaching the aircraft carrier for landing, you'll see the carrier landing lights before you. Keep the center lights straight to ensure you've centered the flight deck. Approach the carrier at speed well below 1.0 Mach to ensure a safe landing. To reduce the amount of fuel used during the flight, throttle back your engines thrust to below 100%, and that's after takeoff. The altitude of the flight deck is approximately 70 feet. And they give you a little glossary in the back of what like ECM and HUD and all that stuff stands for, and that's pretty cool. Okay, the graphics of this game, you start the game, you have a nice little title screen that says Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator. You see the ocean, you see like a sunrise in the distance, and you see a couple planes, the outlines of planes. Once you start the game, the aircraft carrier looks nice and big. Your cockpit looks good as well. When you're in flight, the water in the sky is really nothing special, but the planes look a lot better than the 2600 version. This, I remember Pete Rose Baseball, I was a little bit critical because the graphics didn't seem like that big of a jump. Here they do. This looks, in the 2600 version, still slouch. I think it looks really good for a 2600 game, but this does a fairly good job upgrading the graphics, looking more like an NES title. Music and sounds, there's not really music. You just hear most of the game, like a lot of flight simulators, you just hear the roar of your engine. It's a good roar. I think it fits. I think it sets the atmosphere well. But other than that, you just have interruptions with the alarms going off. And, you know, the times when you just shoot down other airplanes, explosions sound decent. I think it's pretty much copies the 2600 version, but I thought that version does a good job as well. So I think it fits the game well. Both Atari Age and Digital Press agree on rarity, giving it a 4 out of 10. And I would agree with that. There was one external review for 50% on Atari Age. There is no high score club record on this, and I don't blame them. This would be hard to score. On eBay, loose copies were going for $9 to $12. It doesn't seem to matter if it's a mislabeled 2600 version or not. And complete in box copies go for $10 to $37. So someone got a really good deal. I did not own this growing up. I had the 2600 version because I think the 7800 version came out after I got the 2600 version. I didn't know they were making a 7800 version, but I really enjoyed the 2600 version growing up. Now, I bought this on a lot on eBay, and I thought it was a 2600 game for the longest time until I looked at the bottom of it. I don't know how I discovered it, but at some point I saw that the circuit board was different. So there you go. Thanks for hanging with me. That is a long, intense manual. Guarantee you the next one will not be as bad.
Hey, this is Willie
And this is RK.
from the 5200 Super Podcast.
Hey, this is Ferg. What am I doing here?
What are you doing here?
We like listening to the 7800 Game by Game Podcast.
I know I do, especially when I'm not down at the river wringing out my 7800 circuit board.
Beating it against the rock.
And now it's time for some super skateboarding. Radical dude. Cowabunga. Lasagna. Party on.
Super Skateboarding has a copyright year of 1988. It is, in a sense, a sequel to Skateboarding on the 2600, but it's almost its own game. It was programmed and designed by David Crane, the guy who did Pitfall. And after playing that and thinking about that, it makes a lot of sense because the game it feels like it could be related to Pitfall. You have a tall the character design is somewhat similar. You're going through mazes. If you know Pitfall, there's kind of like a maze element. It's not really a maze, but you're trying to find the shortest path in Pitfall. And you're going, taking these underground passages. And in this game, you take tubes instead of underground passages. In Pitfall, you're collecting treasures. Here, you're collecting on and off switches. And both games are like, try and do it in the least amount of time as possible. I can see how they're related. I'm not saying it's exactly like Pitfall, but after thinking about it and playing the game, I was like, yeah, I could feel a little Pitfall in this game. So the box is rad, and it actually says that. Lots of neon pink on the box. You got this skateboard. It's neon green. It's in the 90s. It has some pink triangles and rad on the skateboard. The wheels are pink. There's a shoe. It looks like a Converse style shoe. It's like a zebra speckled black and white shoe with pink laces again. And it has super in white, and skateboarding looks like it's spray painted onto the road that you're on. I think it looks totally 90s. You have to see this box if you haven't seen it before. On the back, it says, "Awesome job, dude. Your new after-school job is a dream come true. Someone's actually going to pay you to skateboard. Here's the deal. Your dad's company needs someone to turn off all the machines and lights in their factory at the end of the day. Your job is to cruise the maze of the hallways, leaping for light switches and tucking through ventilation tubes to get from floor to floor. Jumping on the assembly line will increase your speed, but be careful. You'll be flattened like a road pizza. The faster you finish, the more power is saved and the more you get paid. So hurry up, because there's a lot of floors and the power is leaking out fast." And then it has 3 screenshots. They look like torn pieces of paper, so they're not perfectly lined up. 2 of the shots show the inside of the building. The bottom shot shows you outside in the back. So they're okay screenshots. I like the design of the box. Very, very 90s. Manual is much smaller than F-14 Tomcat. Nope, this is not a skateboard simulator. 6 pages folded. You once again got the black and white. So the instructions, you press the reset to begin your game. Start at the factory door with your skateboard. Press reset to begin. You can walk by moving the joystick in the direction you want to go. What boarder wants to do that? Instead, go to your skateboard, which you automatically pick up, run and jump by pressing the joystick button. Once on the board, use the joystick to move right or left. Press the button to jump. Hold the joystick down to crouch. As you speed through the factory, pass each machine automatically to turn it off. You'll have to jump to turn off those light bulbs though. Hint, if you time your lift off perfectly, you'll be able to hit all 3 at once. And that is very difficult to do, but it is possible. If you want to pass a machine that's already turned off, jump over it or else you'll turn it back on. And sometimes it's not easy to tell where the switch is. So once you play the game, you'll get a feel for where the switches are because some of the machines are longer than others. But there aren't like discernible light switches on these machines. You just pass them and you turn them off. Except for light bulbs, once they're off, they are off. The factory is one giant maze. Tubes are the only way to get from floor to floor, but you gotta find the right tubes. Different tubes go to different floors. To ride a tube, hold the joystick down to crouch, enter the tube and release. If you want to change your mind in the middle, don't release the joystick until you're heading back in the direction you came from. The right difficulty switch turns the game music on and off. Okay, boarders, start cruising. The cruise. Your dad got you an after-school job at the factory where he works. You need the money because being the most radical boarder around means you got heavy expenses. Your job as a skateboarder's dream come true. Miles of halls and tubes perfect for your moves. Isn't he lucky that he's in this gigantic building with tubes that you can skateboard through? Just like every other factory I know of. Just cruise through and turn off all the machines and light in the factory. Hurry up because power's leaking out. Naturally, there's a catch. You get paid depending on how much power you save, and you got to be out of the factory by 5:15 p.m., and it starts at 5 o'clock. 1 second more, and you'll never make your deadline to enter the skateboarding championship. Look at the bottom of your screen to see how radical you truly are. The left meter shows the power consumption of the machines and the equipment you'll have to turn off yet, so it shows it kind of running. The middle meter tells you how much power has been used since you started As you turn off machines and equipment, power consumption slows. So when it stops, you know you got all the machines. The right meter ticks away the minutes you have left. Check out the ratings at the end to see how radical your cruising rates. And then it gives you ratings. Machines. If some but not all are turned off and it hits 5:15, your rating is lower than a dork. If you get them all done in 5 minutes by 5:10 or later, you are a geek. If you finish everything between 5:05 and 31 seconds and 5:09:59, you're mellow. If you finish them all by 5:04:31 and 5:05:30, you're mondo. And if you finish them all in 5:04:30 or by 5:04:30 seconds or less, you're totally tubular. And this game, like, again, not like Pitfall. If you want to do this, you basically got to have a map, and you have to be able to go to map out a path. That's how I had to beat Pitfall. In 2015, I beat Pitfall, got to the kill screen on the 2600 for the first time in my life, but I needed a map. I needed directions to follow to get it all. It wasn't a perfect score, but I got all 32 treasures. I hit this kill screen, and if you're interested, you can see it on my No Swear Gamer page. But this game is a lot like that, where you have to have a path where you're going to go. There might be more than one, like 2 different paths. Pitfall, there's like one standard path you have to do using the underground passages. But if you want to do it in time. But this game, there is more than one path, but I'm sure there's one that's the shortest that you have to do. And there are some dead ends in the halls where you go in and you don't have to go through doors. After you finish the game, moving the joystick right to the right will display the lowest power consumption achieved during the then current place session. Tips from the pros. The assembly line drains the most power. Find them first, because your boss gets angry when the electric bill's too high. If you want to max out your speed, head for the assembly line. Pull down on your joystick twice to get off your board, pick it up. Make a running start and jump on the assembly line. You got to time it perfectly to avoid getting squashed by the plungers. I just don't even do it. Run on top of the machine and jump off the end of the line. Now you're really cruising. The trick will totally speed up your moves unless you fall off your board. Watch the doors in each room. An open door means you have been in the room before and you've checked out the machines. A closed door means you haven't gotten to the room yet. Get in there, dude, and turn that power off. Be careful on the roof. Get too close to the edge, and you and your board will nosedive to the ground. Yes, this building's tall, and you can jump off the roof to your death. No blood. It's just like you hit the ground standing up straight, and it says game over. So it's like it's very humorous, because as you fall down, I think your board separates from you, so it's going a little bit to the right or left, and you're not with it anymore. And yeah, it's funny that they left that in the game. By the way, there are rumors a truly radical skateboarder who finished the factory job in just 4.5 minutes. Are you more awesome than that? I don't even know if that's possible. Oh yeah, that is possible, definitely. Okay, I was thinking 5:01, like they did in 1 minute. I don't know what I was thinking. Okay, graphically speaking, I think the game looks pretty decent. It starts out with you outside the building, a big super skateboarding sign, like that's the name of the building. You have a skyline in the background. You have your guy who looks like he's Pitfall Harry's, grown up son or something, wearing a neon green shirt, checkerboard shorts, getting ready to jump on your pink skateboard. The levels, when you're above the basement, typically one room will be green, one will be red, and one will be blue. You'll have various equipment to turn off, like computers and light bulbs, they mentioned earlier. There's a film projector. There's some other stuff as well. When you're in the basement, all the walls become kind of gray, and this is where you'll have more of the assembly line machines, where they have the 3 plungers going on. And on the roof, you even have some clouds and like a TV antenna on one end of the roof. Overall, I think the game looks pretty good. Some rooms have desks and paintings on the walls, little things, little touches. And I think it looks decent. I don't know if I guess it's kind of like an NES game, so I don't think it looks too bad. Music and sounds, if you decide to turn the music on, you have this rendition of a song that kind of sounds like a version of Wipeout or some sort of Beach Boy type music. It can get annoying to me. Honestly, I almost prefer playing this with the sound off. The sound effects, I think, are okay. Atari Age gave this a rarity 4. Digital Press gives it a 3. I'll go with Atari Age here. There was 2 external reviews on Atari Age, one for 60%, one for 70%, giving us an average score of 65%. For the high score club, Jacob Zuzu got everything turned off in 5 minutes, 4 seconds, and 18 seconds. So he must have been that tubular dude they were talking about who did it under 4.5 minutes. On eBay, loose copies go for $15 to $17, complete $32 to $40. So yeah, this is a bit rarer. So it might even be more of a 5 now. A little bit rarer, more in demand than Tomcat F-14. I did own this growing up. I believe I bought this at a Toys R Us. I bought this before I bought Skateboarding because for the 2600, I ended up buying both games. I really liked the Absolute games growing up. But then again, I didn't buy Title Match Pro Wrestling, so that might have something to do with it. So yeah, I owned this growing up, bought it. I probably did the ticket thing. You go to the aisle, you get your ticket out. It was probably between $20 and $30. And I just remember enjoying it. I don't know how good I did. I don't have a high score binder like Shinto does. I kind of wish I did. But I do remember try and keep my time down. As far as Atari Magazine goes, both these games showed up in issue 2 only. They both showed up in the absolute advertisement that shows all 6 of their games. I believe I mentioned this the first time. And then Super Skateboarding gets a half-page write-up right next to Ball Blazers, so some good company there. I like it. It's a nice. It's got a lot of pink in it. They show like a version of the box art in the background, and of course they're talking again like they're California surfing. I mean, because it even ends. It ends says the guy says, "So what are you waiting for, dude? Start cruising." So of course you have to add that lingo. So that's it for Atari Magazine. Now let's get to listener feedback.
Ed Latin Controllers. Play the games the way they were meant to be played. Go to edlatin.com for more details. Your wish is my command.
And now it's time for listener feedback. You can send your text or MP3 audio submission to Atari 7800 podcast@aol.com.
Over at Atari Age, I asked the users of the forum over there to weigh in on these 2 games. I asked them to rate them on my scale, where the top 5 games on the system would deserve a Hall of Fame rating. The next up, or the next right underneath that, would be a solid. Below that would be meh, it doesn't really do much for you. And then the bottom 5 game on the system would be trash. And when I say top 5 and bottom 5, I'm talking of the original releases, not the homebrew releases, because I like to keep those separate, because it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges, if you will. Anyway, Inky from the Pie Factory podcast was the first one to jump in, and he said Super Skateboarding isn't super and only tangentially related to skateboarding. It's not a terrible game, but once you solve it, there's no need to play it ever again. All you do is look for the fastest path to turn off all the electrical equipment in the factory. That's it. If there's more to the game, perhaps even a building that randomizes where everything is, that would have been something. But having said that, I don't think I've fired this one up in, I'd say 18 years. So this game is a very low meh. Oh, and when you say keep it family friendly, whose family are you talking about? The Manson family? No, the Trammels. So you can't trash the Trammels on my show. That's what I mean by family friendly. All right, so let's see. Next up is Save 2600, Tomcat F-14 Trash, Super Skateboarding Meh. I've devoted the same amount of time to Tomcat as many people showing it on YouTube have, and he gave me a link, and most of them, he says it here, 30 seconds to 3 minutes, and yeah, and won't be getting that time back. And at some point, I will do this. I want to do Tomcat F-14 if it works out on YouTube, a review of it. And if I do it, it's probably going to be more than 3 minutes. It'll be more in depth. Okay, Nikon says Tomcat F-14 salad game, often misunderstood. And it's a tent. It's a game, no scratch at, a flight simulator on an 8-bit system that performs above and beyond for an 8-bit title. One has to spend time with this title in order to get any satisfaction out of it. Not a title for everyone, but to me a solid title all the same. My highest number of kills is 11. I still plug this in and play it from time to time. Super Skateboarding, for me, it's a meh game. A puzzle game more than a skateboarding game. Once you have solved the fastest route, then it no longer holds interest. So we're seeing a theme here. Oyama Family, or however you say it, Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator, trash. It's a game which I mostly hate on the 7800 system, according to my own eyes. Super Skateboarding is salad for me. This is a unique absolute title, which I enjoyed very much on the 7800. Super Skateboarding is a game which involves knowledge in electricity and energy efficiency. The main objective is to turn off all the equipment, machine, and light bulbs as quickly as possible to save more money with the electricity bills. Just to let the Atari Age members know, I'm a graduate in electric engineering since April 2008 at Federal University of Technology in Curitiba. It's a Brazilian Portuguese. So sorry if I totally slaughtered that name. Energy saving, energy efficiency was my top favorite subject in the university. So he's approaching it from an appreciation from his background. Interesting. Drek is back, says Tomcat is trash. My favorite part of was the box it came in. That looked cool. I agree. Honestly, the controls were so complicated with various joystick combos plus weird interactions with the console switches and buttons as well to make the game work. I mean, seriously, hold the reset to perform a game function, but then hold it for a longer period of time to reset the game. Flip the difficulty switches to control elements of the game. Use the select button. A game like this is not meant to be played on a console. It's required that you sit next to your 7800 instead of your couch. Wow. The graphics look good in terms of the cockpit. Nothing really but skies and oceans. I could never really hit a lot of other planes or land the plane either. In short, I found this to be about no fun whatsoever. Wow. Super Skateboarding is solid. It's amusing if unremarkable. Of the absolute branded titles that the company put out, I like this and Kung Fu Master the best. Graphics are okay, challenge is fun, the game is fast paced, unlike Tomcat. Some sound effects are neat, like the projector. The game also has felt like a precursor to their first NES game, A Boy and His Blob, with the screen-to-screen engine. Main characters look similar too. And I think, so you could kind of see the David Crane family tree there with Pitfall, this Super Skateboarding, and A Boy and His Blob, because they're all David Crane games. So a little bit of the evolution of his game, if you will. Trevor says Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator is trash. Wow, being completely transparent of my opinion. Regarding game genres, strategic, slower paced simulations are at the bottom of the pile. However, heavily action-oriented simulations can often be great, like Battlezone, Afterburner 2, and so on. This is no Afterburner, though. Definitely leans towards the slow-paced and likely best to avoid unless an absolute diehard fan of the genre or a collection completist. For those willing to give it a try, be forewarned, your console serves as an extension of the controller. You have to utilize select, reset, and difficulty switches to perform certain actions within the game. And yeah, if you just pick up and play this game, you're definitely probably going to hate it because you're not going to get too far. Let's see. Super Skateboarding. Meh. The game overall is just okay from my perspective, including graphics, sound, and gameplay. It's somewhat of a shame because better performance in just one of these key areas may have made the significant difference in the game's overall rating for me. As it stands, there's nothing about this game that bumps it beyond a meh feeling. Unfortunately, as a side note, ensure the difficulty switches are correct. The right switch be in the left position so there is background music. As relatively simple as the music may be, without it, the near silence is deafening. Well, I guess I'm weird because I kind of actually like the silence. The background music. I like the kind of environmental sounds, if you will. Let's see. Bido Empire says Super Skateboarding meh. It controls well and the gameplay is fairly unique, but it's just a dull game. Graphics are bland. There isn't a lot of excitement or tension when playing. There are certainly a lot of worse games, but this isn't one I reach for very often. Never played Tomcat. Dauber from Pie Factory says, I think I have Tomcat F-14 in my collection from when I bought my 7800 almost 10 years ago, but I never actually tried it. I guess now would be a good time, huh? I think I want to challenge Ferg to a Tomcat off. You do that and record it and send it in, and that will be the audio submission of the year, at least in my eyes. That would be amazing to hear you and Ferg talk about that game. Gambler172 says both are trash. Wow. Soul Blazer, Greg from the SNES podcast, says Tomcat, you know that I like simulators, and I found myself having fun with this one also, once I put the time in with it. And that's the thing. Like the other flight sims that you've covered already on 7800, I enjoy these, but they have a learning curve. You have to read the manual, study the controls, get used to playing them. If you're willing to invest the time, this is a good flight sim. Not as good as Ace of Aces on the system, but better than the others. With nice graphics, sound effects, and good gameplay. However, I can't fault anyone for hating this very niche game. Rating solid. Super Skateboarding, not a bad game, but not a great one either. The controls are easy enough to get a hang of, the sound effects get the job done, and the graphics are decent enough. The gameplay is boring after a while though, and the challenge rating seems way too high. The game is very unforgiving for mistakes. Once I found the switch for the background music, I think that was misspelled, music, that helps some also, but it just gets doing the same thing over and over to me after a while. Rating meh. So I totally understand that. Got some emails from Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. You send me an audio or a text submission. I'll enter you in a contest just like Janitor Sean, and you could win a prize. And I'll probably just do this prize thing one more time, probably around episode 30 or maybe 31. Matt says, hi there. I can't believe I'm late to chime in on my favorite 7800 game so far. Atari Warriors is easily Hall of Fame. Well, finally, someone who kind of sees it my way. I like the run and gun style of the gameplay, and the 7800 version shines in every way. Compared to the good Nintendo version, I prefer the 7800's solid, flicker-free graphics, and I even think they did an amazing job on the sound. The music is in tune, and the sound effects are nice and appropriate. The only thing I would have liked would be a sound effect when you kill someone, but this is a minor quibble. Here is some quick thoughts on other games you've covered so far. Even though I have been lazy about writing in, I really like that your podcast features listener reviews so much. It's cool to hear all the different opinions on these games, and I agree this podcast would be nothing without these opinions. They really, really the listeners who send in feedback, they're the ones who deserve like an award. Not that I actually got a literal trophy, but they deserve the honor in these awards. Super Huey, as I mentioned the last time, I have finally been getting into my 7800 collection after purchasing the amazing Ed Twin Stick. This is a great controller, makes all the difference to me. Until now, I had only spent a small amount of time with many of these games. The mushy control was just too much for me to overlook. And this game requires a lot of control. I actually really like this game, and I will give it a solid. I spent a long time playing the flight school part. I had games like this on my Atari 800 and always enjoyed them, and this is very much along those lines, as you mentioned. Once I figured out how to fly, I did find it fun to attempt the reality mode. Trying to shoot down the enemy and find the base while keeping your chopper afloat is quite a challenge. If more missions were included, I would even say Hall of Fame. Wow, I think that's the highest anyone's been on Super Huey. Pole Position 2 is meh, just not that very fun, especially with the joystick. By the way, I've also played the plug-and-play version with the twisted controller, and I agree that it's the best way to enjoy pole position outside the arcade. This was really a bad choice for the pack-in. Yep. Title match. Ugh. Trash? Maybe meh if I ever figure out the ridiculous control scheme. No, even if you figure out the controls, it's still trash. At least that's my opinion. Food Fight, Hall of Fame, great arcade game, excellent version. Joust, ditto. Donkey Kong Jr., the original Donkey Kong, and Mario Brothers. All of them are solid. I like these versions in the order I wrote them, so Donkey Kong Jr. is first. Like almost anyone, I'm appalled by the extreme out-of-tuneness of the songs, and I laughed a few times listening to all the people rail on it. The sound effects and the gameplay I found to be pretty good, though, and these are fun games. I respectfully disagree with you that people may only feel that way about the music if they played the arcade versions. It's not that it doesn't sound like the arcade that bugs me, it's really grating and out of tune. Well, okay, I'll give you that one. Anyway, I really enjoy playing the 7800 now and listening to the podcast as I catch up. Thanks for all your hard work. You're welcome. I hope I have time to weigh in on more games before you're done. I like to spend some time with each game before I review it. Yeah, I think Christian did the whole, I try and give 30 minutes to every game. So that's kind of a good way to do it. Oh yeah, and one more thing. My Ed controller, Hall of Fame. And I'm getting one for my Coleco 2, which he's talking about the Kickstarter. And you can check out Ed Ladin's Facebook page. He said something recently that the Coleco one, he's getting it to work somehow with the 7800 also. So if you buy one of those Coleco ones, you can actually plug it into the 7800 as well. So check out his Facebook for more details on how that works. Check out his Kickstarter, which by the time this podcast comes out, it'll be nearing the end. At this time of recording, I think he's about 2/3 of the way there, so he could use your help to get over the goal at the end there. But yeah, and don't forget, if you go to edland.com and use coupon code FERG, F-E-R-G, you'll get 10% off your order. And go buy a Seagull 78 adapter if you haven't already. That lets you use Sega Genesis controllers with the 7800 with the 2-button games. That is a must-have. And I think it's only like $25, and you can get 10% off. So go get it. And that was from Matt. Thank you very much, Matt. I really appreciate that. I got an email from Arcade from the Atari 5200 Super podcast. And he says this: Hi, Phil. Hi, RK. As a long-time listener, I've been wanting to write you about the 7800. If you listen to the 5200 Super podcast, you know that I've been on hiatus for a few months until we returned a couple weeks ago. As of when I'm writing this, not when you're reading it here, with the episode on Star Raiders, which recently came out, and I think they're doing Berserk next. But that's not why I'm finally writing. I'm finally writing you to tell you how much I enjoyed listening to the 7800 Game by Game podcast. I never had a 7800 years ago. Back then, I went from the 2600 to the ColecoVision to the Commodore 64. When the 7800 came out, I was moving away from consoles and thinking about computers. I did play Impossible Mission on the C64 and loved it. I also solved it, so I was surprised to hear in your podcast that it can't be solved on the 7800, although it is fun to play. One reason it's taken me so long to write is that I was moving. You know, first things first. Well, I agree with you there. Another reason is that I wanted to fix and have some hands-on time with my 7800. But since you only have a few episodes, I may not have the chance. I was listening to the bumper Willie and I made about our podcast on your last episode, and I say something to the effect that I am down at the river washing my 7800 circuit board. That probably doesn't make any sense to anybody, but it refers to the fact that I bought two 7800s on one on Craigslist, one on eBay. Both worked intermittently, but not enough to get any time to do any real gaming and explore the system. A robotics instructor I know suggested I remove the boards and submerge them in water for a few days and then let them completely dry before reassembling them into the console and powering them up. I never heard of cleaning boards this way, but I got nothing to lose at this point. So now that I'm almost all moved, I found the 7800s, but I'm not sure if I'm going to have them all fixed in time to have played some games and write about them. If I do, and you've wrapped up the 7800 Game by Game podcast, I'll make sure to compare 7800 titles that are the same with what's on the 5200 and mention it on the Super Podcast. Thank you. That's cool. So there you go. I'm glad I finally got a chance to write you and tell you what great service you did for 7800 gamers and wish you much success in whatever you do for your next project. And Phil, I know I don't have to tell you this, but first things first, and that's from Arcade. Thank you very much, Arcade. I thought you already submerged them. Did you not submerge them? I'm curious. That's a very unique way to clean them. I've never heard of that before. I remember hearing him talk about it on the 5200 Super podcast. So if anyone knows about that cleaning technique, write in. Let me know what you guys think of that, of submerging circuit boards. I've also heard of people who bake them, like they put them in ovens or something, and they try to like kind of get the solder to like remelt or something. I don't know. I am not the person to ever try that. But if you had one that's, not going to, is already broken, what's the harm in trying, right? Well, I guess if you put it in an oven, you could actually melt. Don't put the plastic. You could melt stuff and damage it. Don't do that unless you're an expert. All right. One more email from the prisoner, Richie V. So let's see what Richard has to say. He says, I was planning to do an audio submission for episode 26, but Verizon seems to have shot down the internet. Tomcat F-14 Flight Simulator is the 7th of the 8 7800 games I owned back then. My dad bought it probably in Sacramento in 1989. This is another example of how my dad can buy a game that my brother and I ended up not liking at all. As you've already showed, making PC games into 7800 games is very tricky, especially flight simulators. Translating a 100-key keyboard game into a game with only a handful of buttons and switches is tricky. What makes Tomcat worse is that the game is very hard to maneuver the jet at all. Even playing on my PC with an Xbox 360 controller using the analog stick, it's heavy at times and no fun to play. I hated this as a kid. I still hate it today. I rate this game a trash. The final game I owned back then was Basketball, episode 30. I have my list of 7800 games and have rated all the games in your rating system. Hopefully my internet will be up by then, and I'll have an audio submission so you'll know how I rated these 7800 games. Till then, be seeing you. And that's awesome. Thank you very much, Richard. I really appreciate that. Okay, I got 2 audio submissions. The first one's from Greg. I have to apologize. He sent this for the last episode and I overlooked it on accident. He sent it through Facebook messaging and I forgot to check that before I did the episode, even though he sent it like really early. And he also wanted me to mention that when he talks about Barnyard Blaster, because I think he's talking about Barnyard Blaster and Atari, and I'm going to guess he's going to tell me how the NES version is superior to the 7800, because that's typically how it goes, which is totally cool with me. But when he talks about Barnyard Blaster, he wanted me to mention he used an emulator and he mapped the controls to some sort of controller scheme so he didn't have to use a light gun. So let's see what Greg has to say. Greg, the floor is yours.
Hello, Phil. This is Greg, a.k.a. Soulblazer here. Wanted to weigh in with my thoughts on the 2 games you're covering in this episode, because one of the games, as I hinted to in an earlier submission, is a longtime favorite of mine. Atari Warriors, which is a game I love just as much as Commando and spent a lot of time with, like in the arcades, and also the home port. One of the home ports, but we'll get into that. So let me first talk about the other game you're covering this week, Barnyard Blaster, which I don't have any experience with. I do appreciate Atari making some light gun games like the system. back when I had the NES as a kid, some of the light gun games, that system was like some of my favorites, and light gun games are just fun. So, like I really do appreciate the fact that there were 7,800 light gun games, just like I love PAL games on 2600, because it utilized a controller that you don't usually get a lot of experience with. Having said that, you can tell Barnyard Blaster is just kind of a worn over port, like a computer version. The best thing going for it is the short musical tunes that are played, like different stages, and also the background graphics during the stages themselves. They're quite good and detailed, very impressive. The rest of the game I really did not enjoy all that much. The gameplay was kind of simple, kind of repetitive. I found it to be pretty boring. There wasn't enough variety or challenges there to keep things interesting. The control scheme, if you're using a controller like I was in this case, was very slow and sluggish. There's just not enough going on in the game to be like a really fun light gun shooting game. So I was very disappointed because I went into this game with pretty moderate expectations that it would be like a pretty good game, and came away like sorely disappointed. Even though there are different stages, there's just not enough going on in those stages that keep things interesting. It just kind of like shoot the bottle again and again and again, or just like shoot this bird or shoot this rabbit and then shoot the bird. Maybe if the secret blood code that had been included in the original Atari ST version had been left over on this one, that might have added some points for having something different happen in this. As it was, I really did not have any fun with this game at all, so I'm forced to give it a trash rating because of that. I just did not like this game one bit, I'm sorry. Let's go on to the main game I want to talk about, Atari Warriors. This came out at a time period, like in the late 80s, when I was spending a lot of time like in the arcades. Late 80s, early 90s, like the time when I was around like 10 to 15 years old, and therefore was spending a lot of time, and a lot of free money dropping quarters at the games that were popular at the time. And Commando and Atari Warriors were two of the games I loved playing. They're similar in some ways, but they both harken back to that, at least for me, kind of like a strong 80s image of like Stallone and Schwarzenegger films about like being a hero or commando facing against a one-man army against possible odds, just being able to shoot off guns and weapons and just have a heck of a lot of fun doing it. There's really kind of a whole like man-up thing like of this game that really harkens back to a time period. I guess that's one reason that these two games are still cinema favorites like of mine like this day. But as I mentioned earlier, I preferred Atari Warriors in the arcades, but Commando at home, mostly because of the control scheme. And this is the biggest problem Atari Warriors has. In the arcades, it uses a pretty unique control scheme. It has a rotary joystick. What that means is that it was possible for you to have your character's gun pointing in one direction, and therefore being able to shoot in that direction, like we're walking like another direction. It's a very unique control scheme, kind of similar to a twin stick shooter scheme that none of the home ports was able to really duplicate, because of course there wasn't really a rotary joystick like available at home. So over the years, I've played many of the home versions of Atari Warriors, and they're all lacking a little bit because of that control scheme. The controls work fine. It just doesn't have the quite pinpoint control or fine-tune aspects to it that the arcade game does. Having said that, I did have this game like the NES as a kid, and I played the heck out of it. I certainly loved the game a lot. I never played the 7800 version until recently, the purposes like comparing them and also commenting on it like your episode. And as you mentioned earlier, Phil, I do apologize, but like you had the 7800 growing up as a kid, I had the NES growing up as a kid, and that's the frame of reference that I have the strongest affinity for, because those are the games I spent the most time on. I didn't know anybody who had a 7800 growing up. I never even heard. I knew the system's existence, but I never saw one, and certainly never had the chance to play one. So I'm kind of going into this kind of like late with the benefit of emulation, using both a joystick like an NES pad while playing these games, so I can see how the game handles. Because I certainly don't want to use those pain line controllers, and just trying to be as fair and objective on this as possible. But I am going to be comparing this port of the game a lot to the arcade and NES versions, because those are the ones I had the most time spent with. So, first impressions, it seems like a very, very good port of the game. The opening screen is similar to how it was like in the arcade, like in the NES. The plane crashing is the same. The graphics are very good. The background graphics are very detailed and sharp. They're certainly better, like the NES version is. The colors are not as vivid or sharp as the NES version, however, and the graphics of the characters themselves, your soldier and enemy soldiers, are also not as sharp or detailed like the NES version. The music by 7800 standards is very impressive. I was really impressed with how good that tune sounded. It's clearly recognizable as a tune that plays during the arcade version. I love that tune. It's a great tune, like for me, one of my classics, like of the arcade days. It's certainly recognizable. It sounds good by 7800 standards. It sounds great. I wish they'd use a pokey chip like in this game, like they did with Commando. That's certainly one of the major drawbacks of the game. But for what it is, it does sound very good. The sounds are also very good. I prefer the NES music just because that the NES sounded better like the arcade version. But of course, there's more sound hardware available like to work with on there. So. Gameplay itself is very good. All four stages are here. I certainly love the fact that you can play both one-player and two-player co-op like you can in the arcade and NES versions. I especially love the fact that there's 4 difficulty levels, as was the case like of many arcade ports over to the 700, and something I wish the NES had done more of. I think I commented before in the past that I think the NES ports of arcade games were closer to the real thing, but the Atari 700 versions were certainly more fun for casual players to play because of the difficulty levels that you could select from. So having a choice of four difficulty levels is certainly like a lot of fun. There's no continue code in this version of the game. The NES version had a secret code that you could enter to continue the game like after you died. Gameplay is solid. There's certainly everything here recognizable, and it feels and plays like the arcade game. The controls handle just fine. There's no flicker or slowdown in this version of the game, as often plagued early NES games. So that's a positive for it. I kind of prefer the more minimalistic screen display approach that the NES version used. As far as the NES version only showed you your remaining lives and your remaining bullets and grenades in a flashing message in the corner of the screen, compared to the 700 version, which shows you all the information like on top constantly. That's just a personal preference. I just prefer a more like clean and minimalistic approach for displaying information like the player. There are not as many enemy soldier types or as power-ups in the 700 version of the game as there is like in the NES. Once again, like of Commando, they added extra stuff on the NES port of the game that was not present like in the arcade version of the game. So you had a lot more enemy soldier types going up against you like in the NES port, with a lot more power-ups like available to you. But having said that, the soldier types and the power-ups available here in the 700 version are the same as the ones like in arcade. So in this case, the 700 version is being more arcade authentic. And there's an ending, so kudos for that. You can get the same ending in this game as you can the other versions. So all in all, this is a very impressive port. I came away very pleasantly surprised. Personally, I still prefer the NES version. I'm trying to be objective on this. I prefer the NES version. I think it's a little bit better for 3 reasons. The fact that there's more enemy soldier types, more power-ups available in the game. The better music, and also the fact that you have that continue code that you can use. But this game is solid. It's a definite strong game in the 700 library. The only thing holding it back from me giving it a Hall of Fame rating is the lack of pokey chip, which hurts the music some because of that. But still, this is a very solid game. It's a very good port, like an arcade game, and it really shows what 700 can do in the hands of some talented programmers. There is there is a credit screen at the end of the game. I didn't beat the game, but I saw the ending on a video on YouTube. There is a credit screen at the very end of the game after the ending, which shows people who worked on the game. And I don't know if they had any previous experiences on the platform, but it seemed like they did because they really knew the strange limitations of the system, right, and really pulled off a very solid port here. So all in all, like one trash game, like one solid game. So I will be doing future audio submissions for the 2 remaining Hall of Fame games coming up. You probably already know what they are, but keep up the great work, and we need to send you some homebrew games and keep this podcast going. It's surprising to hear you talk about how you're going to be stopping in a few months. It's like, no, but all right. Thanks everybody. Give me a few minutes of time, and catch you all later.
Thanks, Greg. And don't worry, there's a homebrew plan, and you guys will be pleasantly surprised. I think it's going to turn out really well. I think most people will be very happy with it. Atari Warriors, there you go. That is the closest Greg has come to giving praise to a game that had a competitor on the NES, and that's totally fine with me. I totally agree with a lot of what you said about Atari Warriors and the 80s art. I mean, a lot of these run and gun games, for the most part, especially Contra, but Atari Warriors too, it's like, you can almost be like, okay, that person's supposed to be Stallone and that one's supposed to be Arnold. It was a little bit of, a lot of emulating the action films of that era. So yeah, totally appreciate that. I personally thought Atari did a good job with the control scheme because you can shoot one direction and move in another with the 7000 version. That's something I really liked about that version. And Barnyard Blaster, I think I totally agree with you. It's just one of those games that just did not excite me. I've heard some people since the podcast be like, oh, you gave it kind of a hard time. And, it's just our honest opinion. And it's okay if people like Barnyard Blaster. It's just bored me. It was just very, very slow paced. It was like playing Duck Hunt with a little less accuracy and a lot slower of a pace in between the ducks. And I like Duck Hunt. All right. So anyways, thank you very much, Greg. I look forward to finding out about your future 2 Hall of Fame games. That should be very interesting. What a teaser there. Anyways, next up is Lewis, who does a series called Cool and Unusual Games on YouTube that you can look up. Just search for Cool and Unusual Games. And he sent an audio submission. So Lewis, let's see what you got to say.
Hey, Phil, it's Lewis again. And I have a audio submission from a Skype call I had with a friend about super skateboarding. It's kind of long, so I'll just cut right to it. So super skateboarding.
So I just want to remind you again that while I haven't played this in 2 years, it is branded on my frontal lobe. So I think I'm ready to have this discussion.
Well, let's do it.
Why do you love the? I won't say dislike because I don't believe you, but why do you love this game slightly less than I love it?
Well, you see, it's a game that's supposed to be about skateboarding, and so you think...
And is it ever?
It isn't, yeah, it's so raw. Before this, I played Skate or Die. I borrowed it for the Commodore 64 and stuff when I was a kid, and, in that one, you're, doing half-pipe stunts, and you're, jumping on police cars, and extreme things are happening, and you're doing all these stunts, and so, I load up Super Skateboarding. I didn't get this until my retro collecting phase, right? And,
oh, no.
And
This happened late in your life. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. It's pretty much the opposite of skateboarding. If you ever have, a Thrasher magazine and then you have Super Skateboarding, they're, opposites. I don't know how else to say
it. Here's the thing. I think this game sends so many great messages to the youth of both that period and today because you skateboard and you are on a board made with wheels on the bottom, so I think that qualifies.
This is true.
You're skateboarding.
It's true.
So don't tell me this isn't a game about skateboarding because I'm on a skateboard and you wheel that bad boy into a factory where they've just left everything on and you go through and you're just like, no, this will not stand. Okay. Mother Earth needs me. And you go through that, baby, and you just start turning things off because you're not going to have it.
So maybe you're like a straight-edge punk skateboarder.
You're a straight-edge punk skateboarder who loves Mother Gaia with a burning passion.
Yeah, I can kind of see
to be
that.
celebrated.
I mean, you can't really even... I mean, you jump, but you don't really ollie. Like it's almost more like a bad platformer where you just happen to be on a skateboard.
This is just like back when skateboarding was pure, when you didn't need all this like.
You could grind. Grinding was a thing. Why can't you grind off like the desk or whatever they have in there and stuff? You know.
Like back then, man, we didn't need all these fancy tricks. We just rolled. That was something you needed.
Just roll with it.
Yeah, exactly. That was the slogan. These things have wheels. Why do we need to get fancy with it? You know, like I think that's great. Just like go for a coast on your board. Just you and the plank beneath your feet.
The only fun I had with the game was going to the roof and falling off it, and that was the highlight.
That is, I agree with you there, because that is what makes that game a magnum opus, is the fact that you can like ramp your board off the roof of this building, which you have to know as you're doing it, like, oh god, I've made a serious mistake, and then you fall for like 7 frames worth, like it just keeps going from panel to panel of like what floor you're on, and then if I remember right, you don't even get a cool animation for like when you horrifically like splat on the ground. It's just like, I loved it because it freeze framed like right as your ankles were just about to shatter from the horrific like drop you just took, but it stops there, and it's like, now you, the player, must live with the consequences in your mind of what you've just done. And I was like, this is deep. This is the deepest like confrontation with death I've ever had in a video game. No you died screen, no game over, no like would you like to continue, just like look at this freeze frame, look what you did.
That's like in Balance of Power, is this game about preventing nuclear war, and if the nuclear war actually happens, you get this screen that just I can't remember what it does. It kind of it makes you feel really bad though for annihilating the human race. So, I mean, I guess it's kind of serious, right? But so why do you like Super Skateboarding? Like, I was unable to personally get any enjoyment out of this game. My expectations weren't that high, and it managed to just totally like a limbo under
just
my
limbo right
expectations.
Under that bar. Yeah, I think part of it is that you spent the money on it and or the time on getting the ROM, and I did not. So right there, it's like my barrier to entry is nothing.
That's true. It's true.
Yeah.
It's like Pokemon Snap with everything reversed, right? Where
even talk to me about Pokemon Snap. Like, I spent $50 of my little kid money on that game, which was a king's ransom when you're like 13 or whatever I was.
Pokemon Snap is great.
Here's the thing. If you know what Pokemon Snap is when you buy it, I bet it's great. If you are a Nintendo 64 owner and you don't have a Game Boy and you're starving to be part of this freaking hysteria that's sweeping the nation of Pokemon, and Nintendo just won't throw you a bone, and finally Pokemon Snap comes out and you're like, yes, a Pokemon game on something I own, I can't wait to be part of the conversation, and you buy it for $50, which takes you forever to earn, and this is what you get, like 3 hours of repetitive content of like disturbing a zoo while you ride through it on rails.
Okay. Here's like, the big question, though.
I can go to Blockbuster and print out my stickers like a jackass. I can't wait.
Here's the question, though. If you had to spend $50 on, I don't know, Super Skateboarding was probably a budget title, but let's hypothetically, they're both $50, and you've mowed lawns for the whole summer to earn that money. Pokemon Snap or Super Skateboarding?
Oh, that's really hard because I like. Here's a bold statement. I like Super Skateboarding more than I like Pokemon Snap.
That's fair.
Super Skateboarding has like 4 minutes of gameplay, and Pokemon Snap has at least a couple of hours worth.
Yeah, it's true.
I honestly think I probably would have bought Pokemon Snap, even though I think if I played them both now as an adult, I'm like, I'd like the other game more. I think I would have bought Snap because I know there'd be more content there. It'd be at least related to a thing that everyone was talking about that I wanted so desperately to be a part of.
But you can't take Ash and throw him off the roof. And that's one downside of Pokemon Snap.
And watch him fall like off a Pokemon gym for like
this is literally the only enjoyment I've gotten out of Super Skateboarding, by the way. Other than just marveling at how just they made a skateboarding game about being in a bed factory turning things off. How does this happen?
Oh, it's so good, dude. I love it. I love the idea, because I love the idea of, like, you being, like, a punk to the bone, like, skateboarder. Like, you've got your wallet on a chain so nobody steals your bus pass.
You're punk to the bone. You don't know any trick. You're just going to go to this factory and turn lights off.
Don't know a single trick. Okay.
It's sad. It's really sad.
Yeah, it's a bummer. And then you ride that baby without any grinding or ollies or nothing into this factory, and you're like, some irresponsible adult has left all these machines on. Surely this is a product of working for the man, am I right? And then you just ride through and, like, click switches and turn it off, and it's so good.
I like how you can accidentally turn stuff back on, too.
Accidentally or completely on purpose because you want to mess with that conveyor belt?
Well, maybe a little bit.
I'm just saying.
Well, there you have it. I think, Phil, I'm going to have to rate this a trash. I know this is my friend Ryan is going to be very upset about this, but yeah, you can put a trash rating in for me and maybe a Hall of Fame for him.
Thank you, Lewis and Brian. That's awesome to get a conference call on the podcast. Who would have thunk that in 2016 that two guys would be on a speakerphone call talking about super skateboarding for the 7800, or I'm sorry, what did you guys call it? Straight edge modern skateboarder save Mother Gaia edition for the 7800. That's great. I really appreciate that. I got a big kick out of that. Thank you both. That was just a fun segment. I really dug that. You guys did a better job talking about it than me and really helped make this podcast better. And I appreciate that. And you, the listener, don't just be a lurker. Help make the podcast better. Send me your listener audio or text submissions to Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. That's Atari7800podcast at AOL.com. Tell me you've got mail and make it awesome. You make the podcast better. And I don't have many episodes to go. But before I get there, let's see. I got to rate the games. I think overall, this is probably the most beating any two games have taken on the system as far as two games in one episode. There have been games that have taken a beating, but then the other game not so much. These two games have taken a pretty big beating. Lots of meh and trash ratings for both of these. What did I think? Well, don't listen to me because first of all, Tomcat F-14, I really like the 2600 version growing up. I like it. I'm used to using the switches. I'm used to the controls, and I really enjoy Tomcat F-14. Flight Simulator. Really do enjoy it. I think they did a good job updating the graphics for the 7800, better than they did with Pete Rose Baseball. And I actually like that it's a little bit more streamlined than Ace of Aces, where they simplified it a little bit, where you're just going and shooting planes, and then when it's time to land, you land, and that's that. You don't have to worry about too many things going on at once. So I enjoyed this. If you like flight simulators and you like the 7800, check it out. But otherwise, you'll probably want to stay away. Super Skateboarding surprised me. I wasn't expecting to like it. I know I had it as a kid. I didn't remember really liking it. But as I played it, I was like, this is a pretty good time. It controls pretty good, and I know what I'm doing, and it's easy. I was able to get through the building. Now, maybe my experience helped, but I was able to get through it in like 7 minutes the second or third time I played it. Yeah, there's not much to do after it, but it's got a little bit of a charm to it. I enjoy it. I would give both these games a solid, but everybody else is saying like meh or trash. So your miles may vary on that. So basically, don't listen to me. Okay, let's see. Next up, the next episode is going to be Map Mania Challenge and Planet Smashers. So send in your feedback for those. Episode 28 will be Sentinel and Ninja Golf. Sentinel was a UK only release. Maybe, well, not in the United States. I think Australia got the UK games too. I'm not sure. I think so. But Sentinel was an overseas release only. If you are located in the UK, or if you have experience with the game and want to chime in, please do so. I'm going to just play the 2600 version. I don't have the fixed version of it, but I from what I see, they're mostly the same game, but you guys will do a better job rating that one than me. But that'll be in episode 28. 29 will be Meltdown and Scrapyard Dog. Meltdown, like Sentinel and like Barnyard Blaster, I believe is light gun only, and So you have to have the best or an XG light gun or some modified light gun, and you have to have the old school TV to make it work. And then episode 30 will be Basket Brawl and Midnight Mutants. And then 31, I have something special planned. If you're interested in S1500's podcast, it's called Classic Console Gamer News. You can find it at ccg.podomac.com. His Golden Potty Awards were episode 21. It's not entirely family friendly. I believe there is some swearing. So be advised, if you like my show because it's family friendly and you listen to podcasts with the kids around and you don't want to hear swearing, you may want to play that at a different time. But yeah, that was episode 21. And thanks again for the award. And if you want to follow me, you could go to facebook.com/7800 Game by Game Podcast. I'm also on YouTube as the Nosfer Gamer. Recently, I did reviews of the 2600 versions of Rampage and Double Dragon, as well as Barnyard Blaster and Jinx. You can also follow me on Facebook as /the No Swear Gamer or Twitter as /the No Swear Gamer. And if you want to support the show through Patreon, you can just go to patreon.com/No Swear Gamer to support either of my ventures. I am a member of the Retro Junkies Network, and I gave a shout out to anyone from the Retro Junkies who responded to a little message I put in our little treehouse. And so the following guys get a message because they respond to me. So I See Robots of the Toys R Us Report. If you like toys or if you like movies, he does a lot of movie reviews. Rob, he's the originator of the Retro Junkies. Along with Landon, they had the Retro Junkie Super Show, and now they call it Winging It. So check that out. How about Paul from the Televisionaries? He wanted me to talk about some guy who looks like a clown who's like a Dig Dug wannabe. I'm not going to do that here. Are you kidding me? By the way, I believe on your card that would be due. And then George, who's part of Master System Masterpieces and PlayStation Power, which I think Greg's also on. And Greg has the SNES podcast as well. How about Michael? Dude Michael from Two Dudes in a Nest, who is just an awesome dude and stuff. And then, of course, there is Ferg of the Atari 2600 Game by Game podcast, the granddaddy of them all. And of course, don't forget the other new Game by Game podcast of 2015, Shinto and the Atari Jaguar Game by Game podcast, and Willie, who's awesome, and this super, and the Atari 5200 super podcast, along with RK and just a cast of thousands. I think that's it. Thank you guys for listening. And remember, games are fun, but always keep first things first. It's time for me to take my host hat off and put on my editor hat. And I will see you guys later. Have a good one.
The amazing thing about receiving the Golden Potty Award is that it means that somebody is actually listening to us.
Not only are they listening to us, but I guess we didn't offend enough people.
Yeah, I know. I guess we didn't swear enough when we had Phil on our show.
Wait till we talk about Professor Pac-Man. That'll offend some people
true.
For sure.
Yeah, but I thought we talked about it back in the...
I don't know, mister. You remember when we talked about it?